Stop wasting money on overpriced bourbon you don't even enjoy. The truth, for every $60 bottle with fancy packaging, there's a $25 alternative that tastes better and delivers more proof. Today, we're exposing 5 bourbons, robbing you blind in 2026 and revealing the 5 budget champions you should buy instead. We'll show you why Basil Hayden's is literally the same bourbon as a $25 alternative, and how Jefferson's Ocean charges $90 for a boat ride, while better bourbon sits on bottom shelves. Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, $55 to $65. Let's start with a bottle that looks like luxury but delivers disappointment. This is the bourbon that sets the baseline for everything that can go wrong when a distillery chases smoothness over character. Woodford Reserve Double Oaked pours a rich amber that promises depth and complexity. That heavy bottle feels substantial. The label screams craft innovation with its talk of secondary barrel finishing and toasted oak. At $55 to $65, it positions itself as premium bourbon for people with refined taste. But here's the reality check. One sip reveals the illusion. The nose offers vanilla, caramel, and overwhelming oak. So much oak, it drowns out everything else. The palate follows with excessive sweetness, more oak domination, and zero complexity beneath the surface. The finish disappears quickly despite all that elaborate barrel treatment, leaving you with expensive wood-flavored sugar water instead of interesting bourbon. Brown-Forman markets this as revolutionary innovation, taking Woodford Reserve and finishing it in heavily toasted new oak barrels for additional smoothness. The problem? The base Woodford Reserve already leans smooth and forgettable. Adding more oak doesn't enhance complexity. It just creates bourbon that tastes like you're chewing on a barrel stave dipped in honey. Here's what they don't tell you. Those toasted oak barrels used for finishing don't require the same aging time as standard barrels. This is a quick secondary process that costs pennies per bottle while creating the illusion of luxury craftsmanship. You're paying $20 extra for a finishing trick that masks the bourbon's lack of depth. The real scam? Pour Woodford Double Oaked next to a $30 Four Roses single barrel in a blind tasting. Most people prefer the Four Roses and can't believe it costs half as much. Angel's Envy, $55 to $65. Angel's Envy revolutionized bourbon finishing with port wine casks, or at least that's what the marketing department wants you to believe. That curved bottle screams luxury. At $55 to $65, it positions as premium craft innovation. The reality? You're paying $60 for a production shortcut disguised as artisan experimentation. Pour Angel's Envy, and you'll notice that distinct reddish tint from the port cask finishing. The nose opens with dried fruit, maple sweetness, and wine influence. Take a sip and you get caramel, vanilla, and that distinctive port character. Smooth, pleasant, completely forgettable. The finish is short and sweet, leaving zero complexity or depth. Here's what changed everything. Bacardi acquired Angel's Envy in 2015 for an estimated $150 million. Production scaled dramatically. What started as genuine small-batch craft experimentation became mass-market manufacturing. The value proposition evaporated. That port finishing everyone celebrates? It's a production shortcut that masks younger bourbon while adding instant complexity. Instead of aging bourbon longer for natural depth, finish it in port casks for quick fruit notes and wine sweetness. Legitimate aged bourbon earns complexity through years in the barrel, oak integration, oxidation, seasonal temperature changes, creating flavor depth that can't be rushed. Angel's Envy shortcuts that process by soaking younger bourbon in wine casks, creating the illusion of sophistication without putting in the maturation time. And here's the part that should make you angry. The bourbon base likely comes from MGP in Indiana, the same source supplying dozens of craft brands. Angel's Envy charges $60 for liquid that costs $15 to produce. Blade & Bow, $55 to $65. Diageo resurrected the legendary Stitzel-Weller distillery name with Blade & Bow, and if you thought Angel's Envy was overpriced, this bottle takes exploitation to another level. That vintage-looking label, those crossed keys, that Solera aging system, it all screams heritage and tradition. Here's the problem, it's almost entirely fiction. Stitzel-Weller closed in 1992. That legendary Louisville distillery hasn't distilled a drop in over 30 years. Those magical aging warehouses? Empty. Those historic stocks? Long depleted. Blade & Bow contains bourbon sourced from various Diageo facilities, briefly touched by a Solera system that allegedly contains trace amounts of old Stitzel-Weller whiskey. Think of it like adding a teaspoon of your grandmother's famous soup to a massive pot of canned tomato soup, then marketing it as Grandma's original recipe. That Solera system Diageo emphasizes? It's a blending method borrowed from sherry production. Sounds impressive until you realize the original Stitzel-Weller bourbon has been diluted to near homeopathic levels. You're tasting modern Diageo bourbon with the faintest molecular ghost of historic whiskey. Pour Blade and Bow, and the truth becomes obvious. Light caramel, vanilla, mild spice, and a finish that disappears faster than the money you just wasted. There's zero depth, zero complexity, nothing justifying the premium price. Buffalo Trace at $25 delivers more complexity. Wild Turkey 101 at $20 offers more character. Blade and Bow charges double for borrowed prestige from a closed distillery while delivering bourbon that tastes like standard Diageo production with fancy packaging. Basil Hayden's, $45 to $50. Now we're getting to the most embarrassing bottles, and Basil Hayden's might be the single most overpriced bourbon in America. That elegant tall bottle with the metal band, that refined label suggesting sophistication. Gift shops push this as the perfect present for someone special. Here's the truth they'll never tell you. The sophistication is mostly water. Literally. Basil Hayden's is bottled at 80 proof, the absolute legal minimum for bourbon under federal regulations. They can't make it weaker by law. Basil Hayden's sits exactly at that floor, maximizing bottles per barrel while minimizing flavor and character in every sip. But the real scandal goes deeper. Basil Hayden's shares an identical mash bill with Old Grandad. Same distillery, same recipe, same high rye bourbon character, same fermentation process, same barrels aging in the same Jim Beam warehouses under identical conditions. The only difference? Jim Beam adds water to one batch until it hits minimum legal proof, designs fancy packaging, and charges double. Old Grandad bottled in bond costs $25 at 100 proof with 4 years minimum age guaranteed. Basil Hayden's costs $45 to $50 at 80 proof with no age statement. You're paying nearly double for the same bourbon with significantly more water added, 20 proof points removed, and zero additional quality. Pour both side by side, and the difference is shocking. Old Grandad BIB delivers that high rye spice, pepper, cinnamon, oak tannins, with enough proof to carry actual flavor. Basil Hayden's? The high rye character gets diluted into faint whispers. The spice becomes distant background noise. The complexity flattens into one-dimensional sweetness. What remains is expensive water with bourbon suggestions somewhere in the far distance. This is bourbon industry manipulation at its most calculated. Jim Beam knows consumers see tall bottles, elegant labels, and refined marketing, then assume premium quality justifies premium prices. Bartenders know this secret and exploit it brilliantly. They pour Old Grandad BIB in craft cocktails, charge $14 using Basil Hayden's prices, and pocket the difference. That high rye character creates incredible Manhattans, but only at proof strong enough to matter. Jefferson's Ocean, $70 to $90. And now we arrive at the absolute worst offender, the bourbon that represents everything wrong with modern whiskey marketing. Jefferson's Ocean isn't just overpriced. It's an insult to everyone who's ever spent money on bourbon expecting genuine quality instead of logistics theater. The story sounds amazing. Barrels loaded onto cargo ships, crossing international waters for months, experiencing temperature swings and maritime conditions while constantly in motion, with saltwater air surrounding the wood. Revolutionary aging innovation creating unique characteristics impossible to achieve on land. It's a beautiful story. It's also almost complete fiction. At $70 to $90 per bottle, Jefferson's Ocean costs double the standard Jefferson's bourbon. The liquid in both comes from the same source, MGP in Indiana, the bourbon factory supplying hundreds of brands, the identical high rye mash bill, the same base whiskey. The only measurable difference? A boat ride and the compelling marketing story that boat ride enables. Independent laboratory analysis reveals minimal detectable chemical difference between ocean-aged and land-aged bourbon. Blind tastings conducted by whiskey advocate and bourbon enthusiast groups repeatedly fail to identify which Jeffersons crossed oceans versus which traveled by truck. The science doesn't support the claims. Temperature swings on cargo ships don't exceed the dramatic variations Kentucky rickhouses experience during summer, where upper floors hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit while lower floors stay cooler. Maritime humidity doesn't surpass Kentucky's famous moisture levels. Ship motion agitates barrels constantly. So does standard warehouse barrel rotation, a practice distilleries have used for over a century. Every claim Jefferson's makes about revolutionary ocean aging has a land-based equivalent that costs nothing extra and produces identical results. You're not paying for innovation, you're paying for transportation costs and storytelling. The bourbon community has been calling this out for years. Reddit forums roast Jefferson's Ocean regularly. YouTube reviewers consistently rank it as the worst value in bourbon. But casual consumers see ocean voyages and maritime adventure, assume they're getting something special, and pay $90 for bourbon that costs $15 to produce. For $90, you could buy 2 bottles of genuinely excellent bourbon that earned their quality through legitimate aging, not boat rides. Instead, you're buying 1 bottle of MGP bourbon that took a vacation while you paid for the travel expenses. But here's what the bourbon industry doesn't want you to know. For every overpriced bottle, there's a budget alternative delivering better flavor at half the price. Old Forester 1910, $32 to $38. Instead of Woodford Double Oaked, save $20 to $27. Want genuine double barrel finishing without the premium markup? Old Forester 1910 delivers exactly what Woodford Double Oaked promises, and then exceeds it while costing $25 less. Pour Old Forester 1910 and you immediately notice the difference. Rich amber color with perfect clarity. The nose opens with brown sugar, dark fruit, toasted marshmallow, and oak presence that actually enhances rather than dominates. Take a sip and you're hit with chocolate, caramel, baking spice, and genuine complexity that rewards attention. This is what double barrel finishing should taste like. Brown-Forman produces this in the same Louisville distillery as Woodford Reserve. Similar quality standards, similar barrel finishing techniques. The difference? Old Forester 1910 maintains 93 proof, strong enough to carry actual flavor, and doesn't over-oak the bourbon into submission. The 1910 expression honors a historical fire at the distillery that charred barrels beyond standard specifications, creating unexpectedly rich bourbon character. Today, Brown-Forman intentionally replicates that accident, using heavily toasted barrels to finish bourbon that started with genuine quality worth enhancing. That's the crucial difference. Old Forester 1910 starts with good bourbon, then makes it better through finishing. Woodford Double Oaked starts with forgettable bourbon, adds oak, and hopes you won't notice the foundation isn't there. Pour both side by side, and the contrast is embarrassing for Woodford. The 1910 carries more depth at every stage. The spice notes actually register instead of getting buried under oak sweetness. The mouthfeel has weight and presence rather than watery smoothness. Bartenders discovered Old Forester 1910 years ago and immediately started using it for premium cocktails. That 93 proof stands up to mixers beautifully. The chocolate and caramel notes create incredible old fashions. For the price of 1 Woodford Double Oaked, you could buy Old Forester 1910 and have $25 left over for another excellent bottle. Old Forester 100 proof, $22 to $28. Instead of Angel's Envy, save $30 to $40. Skip the port finishing gimmicks. Old Forester 100 proof delivers genuine bourbon character earned through proper aging and quality ingredients, at 1/3 the price of Angel's Envy. Pour this Louisville icon and you immediately understand why 150 years of experience matters. Golden amber color with perfect clarity. The nose brings brown sugar, toasted oak, banana bread richness, and subtle fruit notes, all from bourbon maturation, not wine cask shortcuts. Take a sip and you get vanilla, baking spice, actual complexity, and a finish that lingers with satisfaction. This is what bourbon should taste like when distilleries focus on fundamentals instead of finishing tricks. Old Forester was the first bourbon sold exclusively in sealed bottles, a radical quality guarantee introduced by George Garvin Brown in 1870. That no shortcuts philosophy still defines every expression Brown-Forman produces. No gimmicks, no wine cask finishing, just bourbon aged properly in new charred oak and bottled at proof that lets the whiskey speak. That 100 proof matters more than most people realize. It's strong enough to carry flavor without overwhelming. The bourbon maintains presence across the palate instead of fading instantly. You taste oak integration, spice development, fruit notes from esterification, all the complexity that develops naturally through years in the barrel. Angel's Envy hides behind port casks because the base bourbon lacks this character. Old Forester 100 doesn't need tricks because the foundation is solid. Bartenders pour Old Forester 100 in craft cocktails charging premium prices, knowing it performs better than bottles costing double. That proof stands up to mixers beautifully. The flavor profile works in old fashions, Manhattans, whiskey sours, anywhere bourbon needs to maintain character through dilution. For the price of 1 Angel's Envy, you could buy 2 bottles of Old Forester 100 and still save $5. That's not compromise. That's choosing authenticity over marketing hype. Buffalo Trace, $25 to $30. Instead of Blade and Bow, save $30 to $35. Want genuine distillery heritage without paying for closed distillery nostalgia? Buffalo Trace delivers legendary Kentucky bourbon at honest prices, while Blade and Bow charges premium rates for borrowed prestige and marketing fiction. Pour Buffalo Trace and you immediately recognize quality that actually earned its reputation. Rich amber color, The nose opens with brown sugar, orange peel, vanilla, and oak presence that signals proper aging. Take a sip and you get rich caramel, subtle tobacco, dark fruit notes, and complexity that develops across the palate. The finish satisfies completely, long, warming, leaving you wanting another sip. This is bourbon from one of Kentucky's oldest continuously operating distilleries. Genuine heritage, actual tradition, legitimate quality that didn't require borrowing names from closed facilities or inventing Solaris systems to create fake connections. Buffalo Trace opened in the late 1700s and has been producing bourbon ever since, with Prohibition interruption. The same distillery that makes Pappy Van Winkle, Eagle Rare, Blanton's, and some of the most sought-after bourbon in America. That pedigree speaks for itself. The mash bill is Buffalo Trace's low rye recipe, less spice, more sweetness compared to high rye alternatives. This creates approachable character that works for beginners discovering bourbon and veterans who appreciate balanced complexity. The bourbon doesn't challenge you aggressively. It invites you in, rewards attention, and keeps delivering satisfaction sip after sip. Buffalo Trace's challenge isn't quality, it's availability. The bottle became allocated because genuine excellence created demand exceeding supply. At retail prices of $25 to $30, this represents exceptional value. Just never pay secondary market inflation. Pour Buffalo Trace next to Blade and Bow, and the contrast is devastating. Buffalo Trace delivers complexity, depth, character earned through proper aging in a historic distillery. Blade and Bow offers light caramel and marketing stories about a facility that closed 30-plus years ago. When you find Buffalo Trace sitting on a shelf at suggested retail, buy two. Share one with someone who's been wasting money on Blade and Bow. Watch their face when they realize $25 bourbon from an actual operating distillery just completely embarrassed their $60 bottle. Old Grandad Bottled in Bond, $23 to $27. Instead of Basil Hayden's, save $20 to $25. This is the most embarrassing comparison on our entire list, and the one that should make you angriest about how the bourbon industry operates. Old Grandad Bottled in Bond is literally the same bourbon as Basil Hayden's, except it costs half as much and delivers 20 additional proof points. Let me repeat that. Same exact bourbon. Same distillery, same high rye mash bill, same fermentation process, same barrels aging in the same Jim Beam warehouses under identical conditions. The only difference? Jim Beam takes one batch, adds water until it hits minimum legal proof, designs fancy packaging, and charges double. Pour Old Grandad Bottled in Bond, and you immediately taste what Basil Hayden's should be. The nose hits with pepper, cinnamon, oak tannins, that distinctive high rye character Jim Beam is famous for. Take a sip at 100 proof and the spice registers powerfully. Caramel sweetness follows, vanilla warmth builds, the finish carries heat and character that lingers for minutes instead of seconds. This is what Basil Hayden's tastes like before Jim Beam waters it down to nothing. The rye spice that makes this mash bill interesting shines through at proper strength. The complexity remains intact. Oak, spice, sweetness all working together instead of getting diluted into faint whispers. The bourbon demands your attention instead of politely disappearing like expensive ghost water. Founded by Basil Hayden himself in 1796, yes, that Basil Hayden, Old Grandad carried the original high rye recipe forward for over 2 centuries. When Jim Beam wanted to create a premium line, they didn't develop a new bourbon or improve the formula. They took this exact whiskey, added water, designed elegant packaging, marketed it toward gift givers who don't know bourbon, and tripled the price. The Bottled in Bond designation matters. Federal law requires 100 proof minimum, 4 years minimum age, production in a single distilling season at one distillery, and bottling at a government-monitored facility. Those aren't marketing claims. They're legally enforced quality standards backed by federal regulations since 1897. Bartenders know the secret and exploit it brilliantly. They pour Old Grandad by B in craft cocktails, charge premium prices, and customers never realize they're getting $25 bourbon instead of $50 alternatives. That high rye character creates incredible Manhattans. The 100 proof stands up to dilution in mixers without disappearing. For the price of one Basil Hayden's, you could buy 2 bottles of Old Grandad BB and still save $5 to $10. Wild Turkey Rare Breed, $45 to $55. Instead of Jefferson's Ocean, save $25 to $40. Skip the Ocean Voyage marketing theater. Wild Turkey Rare Breed delivers genuine barrel-proof bourbon complexity earned through proper aging and quality ingredients. No boat rides required, no logistics costs passed to you, no MGP sourcing, and no marketing fiction pretending transportation changes flavor. Pour Rare Breed and you immediately understand what barrel-proof bourbon should be. Deep amber color signaling genuine maturation. The nose opens with intense cherry, cinnamon, vanilla, toasted oak, and heat that warns you this bourbon means serious business. Take a sip at 116.8 proof and the flavor explodes. Rich caramel, baking spice, dark fruit, oak presence, and genuine depth that develops over multiple sips. This is whiskey as it came from the barrel. Powerful, complex, unapologetic, exactly what the master distiller intended before water dilutes character into nothing. Wild Turkey produces this under master distiller Eddie Russell, who learned bourbon making from his father, Jimmy Russell. Combined, they represent over 70 years of expertise distilled into every bottle. This isn't sourced MGP whiskey dressed up with marketing stories. This is genuine Wild Turkey stock selected from barrels aged 6 to 12 years, blended together and bottled at proof that lets the whiskey express itself fully. That barrel-proof strength matters more than most people realize. At 116 plus proof, flavors remain concentrated and powerful. You can add water to taste, controlling dilution and opening up different flavor notes as you go. Jefferson's Ocean arrives pre-diluted at 90 proof. You get one flavor profile with zero control. Rare Breed lets you experience bourbon as the distiller intended, then customize the experience. Jefferson's Ocean forces you to accept their decisions while pretending that boat rides justify premium pricing. The flavor profile proves the difference immediately. Rare Breed carries layers of complexity, oak integration from years of aging, spice development from proper maturation, fruit notes from esterification during fermentation. Every element earned through time and quality ingredients, not shortcuts or finishing tricks. Jefferson's Ocean tastes like standard MGP bourbon with a story attached. Pour them side by side and even casual bourbon drinkers struggle to find the ocean influence Jefferson's markets so aggressively. Professional reviewers consistently score Rare Breed 90+ points. Competitions award it gold medals regularly. Bourbon enthusiast forums recommend it constantly. Not because of marketing budgets or ocean voyage theater, because the bourbon inside delivers quality worth celebrating. Wild Turkey could easily charge $70 to $80 based on proof, quality, and expert reviews. They choose $50 because they'd rather sell volume through honest pricing than exploit consumers with premium positioning. For the price of one Jefferson's Ocean, you could buy Wild Turkey Rare Breed and still have $25 to $40 left over. That's enough for another excellent bottle. Maybe Buffalo Trace, maybe Old Forester 100, maybe Old Grandad BIB. Or just savings in your pocket where they belong instead of funding maritime theater. Skip Jefferson's Ocean completely. Buy Wild Turkey Rare Breed instead. And watch as maritime marketing theater gets exposed for the expensive fiction it always was. 5 overpriced bourbons robbing you blind and 5 budget champions delivering better flavor for half the price. The worst offender? Jefferson's Ocean charging $90 for a boat ride while Wild Turkey Rare Breed delivers barrel-proof complexity for $50. The most embarrassing? Basil Hayden's versus Old Grandad BIB. Same bourbon, double the price, half the proof. If this video saved you money, smash that subscribe button, drop a comment with which budget champion you're buying first, and go spend those savings on bourbon that actually earns its price.